Hello, 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 everybody. Hello, hello. I pray everyone is having an amazing day. I hope that everyone can hear me and we are not having any technical difficulties. Hello, welcome to the interview with your girl, Trish M. I got some juicy, yummy nuggets that's going to help take your whole life to a whole new level. Okay, it is good. We're going to talk about communication and questions and all of that stuff. So go ahead, share this broadcast, invite a friend in, tell them it's on and popping. You know, I'm not on here that long. I come in, I drop these nuggets on you for the interview, and then I'm out of here. So we got some good stuff that we're going to be talking about on today. So if you please let me know ahead of time if you can or cannot hear me, if I'm having technical difficulties, because the last time I think I was talking for 10 minutes, did realize that there was a technical issue. So I just pray that everyone is having an amazing day. It's been a minute since I've come on and done the podcast live, but I am here. I'm super, super excited because I got some yummy stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you. So I pray today is just amazing for everyone and that everyone is still doing well during this pandemic that we're in. Blessings and favor to you. So I'm super excited. All right. If you're just joining us, make sure to share this broadcast with somebody. Let them know that we are live with your girl, Trish M. And hey, listen, we are on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So if you've not subscribed on Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud, follow me, all of that stuff, please make sure to do that because I post every week on the interview. Even if I don't do it live, I'm always posting broadcasts, and I don't want you guys to miss out on what the goings on, okay? Because it's on and popping, y'all. All right, so I think I got all the church announcements over with. I hope y'all ready because we're going to have a good old time today talking. So let's get into this subject. Let's get into the tea of what this podcast is all about. All right, so my topic for today's podcast is the question is real. Okay, let's talk about this. The question is real. Okay, this is something that will make you go, what about this? What about that? The question is so real. All right, so let's talk about this. What is a question, y'all? So a question is a problem for discussion or a problem that is under discussion or a matter for investigation. So when you ask a question, that means that you got a problem with something or you need to know something and you need further information. Now, I'm going to talk to you today because, listen, asking questions is like the key to your next level. I'm going to say that again. Asking questions is going to be one of the keys to your next level. So I want to help you today with understanding how to ask questions, how to better communicate and take your talk, your walk, everything to a whole new level. Because again, when you're asking questions, you are trying to figure out a problem or you're trying to investigate something and you need more information about something. Why is asking questions important? One, because the Bible tells us that in all you're getting, you need to get you some understanding, okay? And how can you get some understanding if you don't ask questions? Proverbs 4:7 says, the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and whatever you get you some insight, okay? Psalms 119:104 says, through your precepts, I get understanding. Therefore, I hate every false way. So you get to understand true and false. And when you understand what false is, you hate false, you turn to truth every time. And I got one more scripture to you before I get into some more details. James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. So another way, or should I say another person that you should be asking questions to is God, right? So So not necessarily just your family and your friends, but you or your business partners, co-workers, etc. But you need to be making it a habit to ask God some questions, right? Now, I don't know about you, but there are some things that I need some understanding from God from time to time. And a lot of times, God is the only person that can help me get my understanding. So I have to go and I have to ask God questions as well. So let's talk about this. One of the things that we have to understand is that we need to be seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. Oh, that's good. That's yummy. We need to chew on that just for a second. We should be seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. All right. So that's a Selah moment, because a lot of times we just want people to understand what we're saying. You just need to get what I'm saying. That's it. And get with the program, because this is how I feel and that's it. But you got to also understand that you need to be seeking to understand why they said what they said, why they did what they did. Because if not, you're going to be operating in your emotions, because all you want is your point to be heard. And you're not really trying to understand the way they feel or the way they're thinking or where they're coming from. You just want to do you. The point is simple. All right. And that's not the way to go. So we need to be seeking to understand and not necessarily seeking to be understood. You got to understand this is funny. We got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, because we need to listen twice as much as we speak. I'm going to say that again. We got 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, because we need to be we need to be listening twice as much as we're speaking. But a lot of times we don't take the time to listen. We don't take the time to really chew on what we've heard. And we've got to make sure that we're understanding what it is, why it is, how it is. And so in order to do that, we got to make sure that we're listening, that we're getting an understanding. In all of our getting, we're going to get some understanding. We're going to get some understanding today, okay? All right. So why am I talking to you about understanding how to ask questions, understanding how to get understanding? Because communication is the most important skill that you, me, anybody else can develop. You know, if we're a leader, and we all are, because there are people that we're leading in some capacity, whether we like it or not. There is somebody following our lead. If we are the true leaders that we say we are, that we act like we are, we got to understand that we got to keep developing communication. If you feel like you've already arrived in your communication, you've already missed it. Listening isn't a haphazard. You are likely interested in listening for specific information. Let me tell you something. If you're listening for specific information, that means that in order to communicate well, you got to ask the right question and ask it at the right time. Okay, I'm going to say that again. If you're going to really be a great leader, a great communicator, you got to make sure you're asking the right question, but also asking it at the right time. The wrong question is almost guaranteed to generate the wrong answer, but the right question asked at the wrong time in the wrong context is useless, right? You got to understand what I'm saying. You might be asking the right question, but you got to make sure you ask the right question at the right time, because asking the right question at the wrong time in the wrong context while you're in a pressing situation, all of that, it is not going to help you. So you also not necessarily only have to know how to ask questions, but you got to have wisdom to know when to ask those questions and who to ask those questions to, because you can't ask certain people the same question that you would ask somebody else, right? Some people are not mature enough, or they're not ready enough. And so you may have to ask somebody with wisdom, okay, how do I approach, or how do I ask, or when do I ask? Because this person that I know is not mature enough to receive, And so you got all of these questions, and you don't know, you got to make sure that you know when to ask and how to ask those questions. So on today, I'm going to give you key ways that you can ask the right questions that can help build your communication skills, that can help take you to another level and being the best version of you. So, key number one, and I'm not going to give you all of these in one session. I'm going to break this up into a two-part podcast. All right. So, key number one, if you're going to ask the right question and you're going to communicate better, you got to, number one, avoid asking rhetorical questions. Okay. I'm going to say that again. Avoid asking rhetorical questions. A rhetorical question is a figure of speech in the form of a question. So you're giving a figure of speech, but you're kind of saying it in a question format. They are typically asked in order to make a point. So when you ask a rhetorical question, you're just trying to make a point rather than to elicit an answer. These things right here, when you're doing these rhetorical questions, these are not questions, but they're designed to force someone into a specific response. This gets you nowhere. So you got to be mindful that if you're asking rhetorical questions, that may frustrate the person that's actually listening to you, the person that you're asking the question to. They don't want you to ask them a rhetorical question. Okay. Number two, you got to ask friendly, clarifying questions. What do I mean by that? A good question lets you better understand the situation, right? And this requires not putting people on the defensive. This means that the demeaning a person rarely produces honest feedback. So you got to make sure that when you come to a person, you can't have in your mind that, you know what, I already know the answer, so I'm gonna come at them this way because I'm already mad, I'm already frustrated, and I'm already ticked off. So you got to understand that you can't come one way expecting an honest, a responsible feedback if you're coming at them in the wrong way. But you want to ask friendly, but yet clarifying questions, meaning that you want them to be specific so that you can better understand the situation, right? And my husband, one of the things he told me, he said, one of the ways that you can be a better listener and not come back with a demeaning response is something simple. You can say, help me to understand. Like, can you help me to understand why you said that? Can you help me to understand why you did that? Can you help me to know where were you coming from? What was your mindset? Help me to understand that. Because a lot of times we don't understand and be like, what did you thought you was doing? Why do you do that? That was so, like, you know what I'm saying? You come at a person the wrong way because in your head, you think you already got it figured out. So your question isn't necessarily friendly. It's almost in your face, and it's not open for a good response. So when you come at somebody a certain way, they're looking at you like, oh, you coming for me? Like, why are you coming for me? Like, I heard your question, but I heard also the way you asked the question. You coming for me, And so you got to be careful with that. Leads me to number 3. Don't set traps, right? When you're asking a question, don't set traps. Don't put the listener on the spot. That is a very uncomfortable situation. Try your best not to put the listener on the spot. All right. So it's like there, you could comment and it's like how some people can be trying to be funny, but not really funny. Be like, oh, okay, so when you gonna stop? Being your wife? So when you gonna stop smoking? I'm just asking for a friend. So that's a trap, right? So it's like you put somebody on the spot, but if you're really trying to get an honest answer, or you really trying to get improvement or next level, what you did was you just put that person in an awkward situation. So you got to understand that when you set traps like that, the question was designed to force a denial, or another, or whatever, but it wasn't designed for them to give you a good, honest, conversational response, right? Because why? You put them on the spot. Matter of fact, you called them out in front of some folks, and they don't like that. That's setting a trap for people, and people don't want to feel like you're trapping me into giving you a response versus us just actually having a conversation. Listen, this is going to help better your communication. This is going to help take you to the next level. Don't try to trap people in a question. If you think you already know, well, I already know where he was yesterday at 5 o'clock, but I'm finna ask him and I'm fixing to, say it in this way to let him know that I already know. Kind of rhetorical, but the meaning at the same time. And so that person is not going to be open to respond to you in the way that you really want them to respond. Matter of fact, they may even walk away. They may say they ain't got time for this. They may cut you off. It doesn't leave room for you guys to have a good conversation based on the question that you ask. And so you got to make sure that you're asking questions that are not trying to set up traps for people just because you mad or you tick or you are frustrated or whatever it is. Like, what that is. So you don't set traps. Number 4, when you're learning how to be a good question asker and a better communicator, right? You want to ask open-ended questions, right? You want to ask open-ended questions. There are a few questions that you can actually answer with yes or no, back or front, A or B, right? It's better to ask when you're trying to really have lines of communication with someone. It's better to ask an open-ended question, one with artificial bounds, and where you're able to give the respondent time to answer with appropriate level of detail. So open-ended questions also allow the listener a greater comfort with the communication, since they're not forced to make an incomplete choice. Like, you're not forcing them, to give you an answer. You're not forcing them to, what you're doing is you're not forcing, but you're trying to enforce good communication between the two of you. All right. So when you think about the questions that you're going to ask, like I said, the one before I said, you can ask somebody to help you understand how they feel. You can ask them to help you understand where they're coming from. Ask them to give you specifics of what they mean, because sometimes when you say, if somebody, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. If they say, well, I believe that you're too hard, or you're too this or that, and then you're like, no, I'm not, and they say, yes, you are. No, I'm not. So instead of going back and forth with that, you should ask a question, open-ended question that will help the communication, right? So if they say, well, I think you're just too hard, you're too rough, you're this, you're that, you could say something like, well, can you give me an example of a time where you felt like I exhibited that type of behavior? Can you give me an example of a time where you felt like I was too cold, like I was too blunt, like I was nonchalant, like I didn't care? Can you be specific? Because, and I tell my husband that if he tells me, well, this is how I felt like, you responded or how you acted. And then I have no clue what you're talking about, because you may be talking about something that happened 2 years ago, last week, last year, the other day. I don't know. And so what my response is, because I want an open-ended conversation from that question, I would say, well, can you give me a particular time where you felt like I did that, right? So that I can see mentally what you're talking about, and I can see where you're coming from with feeling like that. So you got to ask questions that will open yourself up to having communication as to why you do certain things, or why you respond the way you respond, or why you do what you do. And so it's like you got to ask the right questions so that you can get an understanding of where y'all are coming from, where they're coming from, why they feel the way they feel. Okay. So asking open-ended questions is a big thing. And I got one more. When you're learning how to ask the right questions, and you're learning how to have great communication or better communication with someone, whether that's someone you're in a relationship, or whether that's someone, a family or friend or whatever, you want to also, number 5 is be grateful, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. You got to be grateful in that time of that communication. You need to thank the person for their response. I know that sounds crazy, because here, listen to this. They may not even give you the response that you want to hear. right? But being grateful, one of the things I teach everybody is to be grateful. Find reasons to express gratitude. And this is one that can be a little, you got to let go of your pride or your ego, because again, in this communication, you're not saying, they may not say everything you want them to say, but you got to thank the person for their response. Thank the person for them being honest with you and allowing, opening your eyes to see something that you probably would not have seen if it was up to you. And so this person, all they're doing is helping you to understand you, right? Or to understand a situation. And so in that, because you got something from that moment, what you need to do is say, you know what? I want to thank you because you really helped me in this conversation. I just want to show gratitude to you because you opened my eyes to see something that before I didn't really see. And so when you're having conversations with people and you're asking questions to try to get a better understanding, you're asking questions to better your relationship, you're asking questions to help improve you as a business partner, as a worker, an employee or employee. You need to express gratitude to that person that gave you information that can help you win. Okay, because if we get outside of our self-righteousness, outside of our pride, outside of our arrogance, there is something in opening the questions. There's something in asking questions that will help you get to that next level. And so we got to be mindful that this is a part of what God has for us. Like I said at the very beginning, God said, in all you're getting, get some understanding. He said, know what it is, get wisdom, because wisdom is beautiful. Tie it around your neck, wear it upon your heart. Get wisdom, open your mind to that. And when God allows wisdom to come, and sometimes it's not in the way that you want it to come, show gratitude and say, you know what, God, I had an uncomfortable situation today, but I learned something. You can say, you know what, God, I had a situation today where I had to address somebody and it was a hard situation, but even that I learned something. So I just want to show gratitude to you first and foremost, God. And I'm grateful for that person for opening my eyes to see something that I didn't see. And so if we take these strategies and apply them, this is definitely something that's going to help us in our communication to be wiser, to be stronger, to be more effective when we're talking to our friends and our family, our coworkers, our employees. Communication is the key. And in all our getting, asking good questions is going to help us get an understanding of who we are, what we're called and destined to do, who we're called and destined to be. But a prideful person doesn't want to get it. Right? And what does a prideful person doesn't want to ask the hard questions. A prideful person doesn't want to hear the hard answers. A prideful person will live in their own world and not even give an ear to hear what that person that's on assignment to them, they don't even know they're on assignment, what that person is saying to them. And so this is where you have to let go of ego so that you can be the best version of you. You got to let go of pride, because God says those that walk in pride, arrogance, selfishness, self-righteousness, all that, he says, I bring them to a low place. He said, but the humble, excuse me, he said, but the humble, I will exalt. And so I don't know about you, but I want to get into a place where I am just really, really focused on getting an understanding for my business, for my ministry, for people that God has called me to shepherd and pastor with my husband, for my friends. I want to make sure that I'm getting an understanding of how I can be better, how I can grow. And I got to have hard conversations sometimes. And I got to learn how to engage in asking better questions. So I want to challenge you today. How are you going to go out and ask better questions? Listen, walking away from a situation and not asking questions, that's not helping at all. You got to learn to face the truth of whatever it is. You got to learn to address people that need to be addressed. You got to learn to how to address those people. You can't trap them. You can't set up booby traps for them. You can't give them rhetorical questions. You can't be demeaning, but you gotta be able to be mature enough to ask questions that's going to give you the truth of what you need so that you could grow, be better, and mature in the way that God desires for you and I to mature. And so I hope that bless you. That's part one of the question is real. We got to ask these hard questions so that we get to the next level of being who God needs us to be. So I hope that bless you. Go and text somebody and let them know that the interview was on today and they need to hear this. They need to, because it's going to help them communicate better, be more effective, and be who they need to be for God first, and then for others around. I'm going to come back next week and I'm going to give you part two of the question is real. I need you to make sure you tune in. I'll be back next Thursday at 3 p.m. There's no technical difficulties. You know how we could get delayed with technical issues. So I'll be back next Thursday at 3 p.m. to give you part two of how to communicate effectively by asking the right questions, doing it in a way that's going to open the lines of communication so that you could be great on purpose. All right. So if you've not subscribe to my YouTube channel, Prophetess Trish Morissette, my Apple Podcast channel, the interview podcast with Trish M, all of that stuff, please make sure you do that. And until next time, I will see you guys on next week with another episode of the interview with your girl, Trish M.